Hello, fellow readers, and welcome to our bookish oasis. Today, we embark on a transformative journey through the thought-provoking pages of Ragtime by Doctorow. Remember, liking and following me on YouTube not only shows your support, but also helps others discover my content. So hit that like button, hit that subscribe follow button, and let's grow this community together. Chapters 1-3. Chapter 1. The novel opens on a domestic scene in New Rochelle, New York. The upper-class family remains nameless. Rather, they are referred to throughout the novel as Mother, Father, the little boy, and Mother's younger brother. The family's fortune resides in the manufacturing of various patriotic paraphernalia, such as fireworks and flags. Mother's younger brother is in love with Evelyn Nesbit, Evelyn Nesbit's husband, Harry Key. Thaw is facing trial for murdering her ex-lover, architect Stanford White, in a fit of passion. The little boy, largely left to his own devices, dreams of escaping from his family and town. He is incredibly fond of escape artist and magician Harry Houdini, whose car breaks down in front of the house one day. Father invites Houdini in for tea while the car is being fixed and tells Houdini of his plans to journey to the Arctic. Chapter 2. Father prepares for his trip to the Arctic. His family and a number of his employees accompany him to the railway station. As Peary, Father, and the rest of the expedition set sail for the Arctic, Father notices a boat full of bedraggled immigrants sailing into the wharf. Father experiences an acute feeling of despair at this sight. Chapter 3. An omniscient narrator describes the immigrant population pouring into New York City and how they are processed at Ellis Island. The descriptions of the new immigrants are not favorable. Neither is the reception the immigrants receive from New Yorkers and, more specifically, from older, more established immigrants. The narrator narrows focus to Mame, Tateh, and the little girl. Their experience is not unique. Tate works as a peddler, and Mame takes in sewing to help supplement the family's meager earnings. They live in poverty in the apartment housing on the Lower East Side. When Mame's boss offers her money for sex, she reluctantly agrees. Famed journalist Jacob Riis briefly enters the story to photograph and write about the plight of the poor living in the tenements. Riis asks architect Stanford White, renowned for his elaborate and expensive building designs, if he's ever considered designing better housing for the poor. Chapters 4-6. Chapter 4. Mother's younger brother's obsession with Evelyn Nesbit grows stronger. Evelyn Nesbit contemplates her husband, Harry K. Thaw, and his fate. A violent man, he has little chance of persuading a jury that he was temporarily insane when he killed Stanford White. Because of his wealth and celebrity status, Harry Key, Thaw receives much better treatment than the average prisoner at the Tombs. Evelyn Nesbit, despite knowing her husband to be guilty, plays the dutiful wife and continues to proclaim Thaw's innocence. Chapter 5. Harry Houdini happens to be at the Tombs, the prison where Harry K. Thaw resides while awaiting trial. Houdini challenges the warden's statement that the cells are secure and performs an escape from one such cell. During the escape, Houdini encounters Harry Key, Thaw, and experiences an unsettling moment. However, it is not until later that Houdini actually learns the inmate he stumbled upon is Thaw, the killer of Stanford White. Houdini's real name, Eric Weisis, is revealed, as is his Jewish heritage. Sigmund Freud arrives in America for the first time and receives a lukewarm reception as some believe his theories to be unsound and perverse. Chapter 6. Freud travels around New York City. He sees many sights but can focus only on the obscene level of noise coming from the streets. He flees back to Vienna, Austria, and concludes America is a gigantic mistake. The narrator turns to a discussion of the deplorable working conditions of the average worker at the time, focusing largely on child labor. African Americans of the time continue to experience social, racial, and economic discrimination, frequently coupled with violence. Many wealthier citizens of America seem to exhibit a growing awareness and concern for the growing issue of poverty, yet their methods decry this concern as superficial, meaningless, and often at the expense of the poor. Chapter 7, 9. Chapter 7. Leaving the tombs one day, Evelyn Nesbit notices no reporters are following her. She takes the opportunity to explore the city, ordering her driver to take her to the Lower East Side. A beautiful little girl catches her eye, and when Evelyn Nesbit approaches the girl, she notices a length of clothesline attached to her wrist connects her to an old man's waist. Tateh, now a silhouette artist, explains to Evelyn Nesbit, many children are stolen from their parents and sold into slavery. Evelyn Nesbit demands to know where the girl's parents are, and Tateh tells her his family story. Touched by his story, Evelyn Nesbit continues to visit Tateh and the little girl. The press accuses her of having multiple affairs with other men, but Evelyn cares little for what they write in the papers. One day, failing to find Tateh and the little girl on their usual corner, Evelyn visits their home only to discover the little girl is deathly ill. She nurses her back to health while Tateh returns to his work. Fueled by his growing love, Mother's younger brother begins to follow Evelyn on a regular basis. Chapter 8. Tateh convinces Evelyn Nesbit to join him at a socialist meeting featuring anarchist Emma Goldman. Goldman recognizes Evelyn Nesbit and in her speech on her skepticism of the institution of marriage, exposes Evelyn Nesbit, claiming Evelyn Nesbit used her sexuality for social and economic gain. Tateh flees with the little girl from Evelyn Nesbit. Emma Goldman takes Evelyn Nesbit to her apartment, all the while criticizing Nesbit's behavior. Emma Goldman recounts her youth and her fight for equality and labor rights as she undresses Evelyn Nesbit, encouraging her to free herself literally from the uncomfortable clothing and all it symbolizes. Mother's younger brother, having followed the two women, burst forth from Goldman's closet at the exact moment of his sexual climax. Chapter 9. In New Rochelle, Mother becomes increasingly worried and angry at her brother. While walking in the garden, she discovers a newborn infant buried alive. She rescues the baby and immediately reports the incident. The police take a young African-American washerwoman into custody. Mother takes both the washerwoman and the baby into her home. Chapters 10, 12. Chapter 10. Father writes home from the Arctic every day. Peary's expedition to the North Pole proceeds. His assistant, the African-American Matthew Henson, supervises the training. Father thinks the Eskimo men and women working with the expedition are primitive and child-like people, and curiously notes the Eskimos exhibit no sexual timidity. Traveling through across the ice becomes difficult as the expedition nears the pole. Father presents Peary with a flag from his factory to place at the North Pole and then returns to New Rochelle. Peary reaches the North Pole, yet remains unsatisfied. Chapter 11. Evelyn Nesbit and Mother's younger brother strike up a relationship. They engage in frequent sexual intercourse, but find they have little to speak about otherwise. Mother's younger brother helps Evelyn Nesbit search for Tateh and his little girl, but with little success. Goldman criticizes Evelyn Nesbit's acceptance of her role sex symbol. To ease her consciousness, Evelyn Nesbit donates money to various causes, but remains unhappy nonetheless as she misses Stanford White for her role as devoted wife during Harry Key, Thaw's trial, his lawyers finalize Evelyn's divorce. She receives $25,000 as part of the settlement. Chapter 12. Growing increasingly concerned about the conditions in which his daughter is growing up in New York City, Tate takes all of their money and buys a ticket out. As the father and daughter travel out of the city and through New Rochelle, the little girl sees the little boy playing in front of his house. They continue up the eastern seaboard, and Tate is elated to see his little girl becoming more and more cheerful the further away they get from the city. Chapters 13-15. Chapter 13. Experiencing an ever-growing dissatisfaction with his escape and magic routines, Houdini learns to fly. He conducts an informal exhibition of his newfound talent for a number of German officers. The commandant of the Imperial German forces asks him to perform another exhibition, and Houdini complies. Unbeknownst to Houdini, Archduke Ferdinand and his wife, the Countess Sophie, are in the crowd. Houdini meets the Archduke after his display, and the Archduke congratulates him on inventing the airplane. Chapter 14. Father returns home from his journey to the Arctic to find mother caring for the washerwoman's child. The washerwoman, Sarah, meanwhile, remains sequestered in her room upstairs. Father feels isolated from his family and former life as his wife now exhibits a greater competency and business acumen, and his son has matured. Mother's younger brother, increasingly depressed by Evelyn Nesbit's rejection, constructs a bomb. Chapter 15. The little boy develops a fondness for discarded and neglected items. Grandfather tells him Ovid stories, specifically recounting the ones about transformation and illusion. The little boy begins to become aware of his pending manhood and his vanities. Chapter 16-18. Chapter 16. Tate and the little girl travel to Lawrence, Massachusetts, where Tate finds employment in a textile mill. Tate notes his daughter is beginning to grow up and worries about how she will change as she matures and what effect her new environment will have on her. Pay and working conditions are grim, and the textile mill workers strike. The strike organizers set up a network of families where workers can send their children for safety. Tate struggles with the decision, but ultimately decides to send the little girl away. The city marshal, fearing bad press, bars all children from leaving, and as a result, chaos breaks out at the train station. Tate is injured and separated from the little girl, who is placed on the train. The train leaves the station, and Tate runs to, catches up with, and jumps aboard the train. Chapter 17. Tate and the little girl disembark from the train in Philadelphia. A despondent Tateh doesn't know how he's going to provide for the little girl in this new city. He reads of the strike's success and decides they will move back to Lawrence, Maine. Walking around Philadelphia, they happen upon a novelty store. Tate quickly produces a series of sketches he shows to the store owner. When flipped through quickly, the drawings become animated like a cartoon. Tate signs an agreement to produce more books of this nature. Chapter 18. Henry Ford pioneers the assembly line, contributing to the increase in manufacturing and mass production of goods. This results in a devaluing of individual human labor as a result. Chapters 19-20. Chapter 19. The narrator introduces J.P. Morgan, one of the pioneers of banking and financing. J.P. Morgan is an incredibly wealthy man with an interest in art, and specifically Egyptian art. He despises other men of his social status, as he finds them dull. However, J.P. Morgan sets up a meeting with Henry Ford, as he believes they are two of a kind. Chapter 21. Father finds the increased interest in Egyptian culture repulsive. However, the little boy is fascinated by Egyptian culture. Coalhouse Walker Jr. arrives in a fancy model to call on Sarah. Sarah refuses to see him. Mother notices Coalhouse doesn't act like other Negroes. He doesn't act submissively to the white family, but rather acts as though they are his equals. Coalhouse continues to visit Sarah every Sunday and is turned away every Sunday until Mother, despite Father's objections, invites him in for tea. They learn Coalhouse is a jazz pianist in New York City. He demonstrates his skills with a ragtime tune of which none but Mother's younger brother have heard. They are duly impressed by his talent. Sarah continues to refuse to see Coalhouse, but begins to act motherly towards her baby. Father, confused by Coalhouse's proud behavior, concludes Coalhouse is not aware he is a Negro. Finally, late in winter, Sarah accepts Coalhouse's marriage proposal. Chapters 22-24. Chapter 22. Mother's younger brother travels to New York City on a regular basis to attend Broadway shows. He attracts the attention of a number of women, but soon realizes he lacks the money to live a lavish lifestyle. He turns to prostitutes for company, but not sex. One day, he stumbles upon the office of Mother Earth, Emma Goldman's anarchist magazine. For several nights, he observes the comings and goings of these offices from afar. One night, however, he is invited in and learns they have mistaken him for a police spy. Emma Goldman takes him to a rally about the Mexican Revolution, an ongoing event of which Mother's younger brother is at a post-rally party. Mother's younger brother waits for hours for a chance to speak to Emma Goldman. She finally approaches him and informs him she does not know the whereabouts of Evelyn Nesbit. She criticizes his self-pity as indulgent and tells him if he and Evelyn Nesbit were to reunite, their love would dissolve just as it did before. Mother's younger brother concedes Goldman is probably telling the truth. Goldman tells him romance matters less than friendship and the sharing of ideals. Mother's younger brother contemplates suicide on the way back to New Rochelle. Chapter 23. After a visit to Sarah, Coalhouse Walker drives back to New York City and encounters some difficulty as he drives by the Emerald Isle Firehouse. As he does every Sunday, the volunteers, led by Willie Conklin, block his passage and demand a toll in order to pass. Coalhouse, refusing to pay the toll, first attempts to reason with the volunteers, then attempts to drive his Model T round the barrier. The firemen successfully prevent his passage, and he leaves his car and seeks help from a police officer. The officer dismisses the situation as a harmless practical joke. Returning to his car, Coalhouse finds his car pushed to the side of the road, vandalized, and pile of excrement on the seat. Coalhouse confronts Willie Conklin just as a police van appears, and despite the state of his car, the police believe Conklin's recounting of events and Coalhouse is arrested. Father posts bail for Coalhouse's release. Mother's younger brother feels sympathy for Coalhouse's troubles. Coalhouse redesignates the wedding funds towards securing a lawyer. Mother's younger brother visits the site of the incident and takes note of the vandalism. Chapter 24. Mother's younger brother plunges deeper into depression. In efforts to pull himself out of depression, he engages in rigorous exercise. Mother's younger brother sympathizes with and begins to understand the magnitude of the anger Coalhouse Walker felt over the destruction of his Model T. Coalhouse faces difficulties securing legal representation. He meets with and is rejected by 3 different lawyers. Even Father's influence cannot improve the situation. Coalhouse considers representing himself. The family frequently discusses Coalhouse's predicament. Sarah informs Mother's younger brother Coalhouse told her they cannot marry until he gets justice, and his car is restored to its original condition. Chapters 25, 27. Chapter 25. Frustrated by Coalhouse's postponement of the wedding, father visits Willie Conklin. However, before he can, Sarah learns President Taft's vice president, James Sherman, will attend an event in New York City. She leaves the house with the intention of asking for the vice president's help in petitioning the United States government on Coalhouse's behalf. As Sarah calls out to Sherman, mistaking him for the president, she is struck in the chest by a security guard, and a Secret Service man jumps atop of her in order to restrain her. She is hauled off to jail and later to the hospital, where she becomes very ill. Mother, father, and Coalhouse visit her, but within a week, she dies of pneumonia. Chapter 26. Coalhouse Walker spends all of the money he has, the former wedding money that became his legal fund, on an elaborate funeral for Sarah. The orchestra, for which Coalhouse plays piano, marches behind Sarah's coffin all the way from Harlem to Brooklyn, where her body is laid to rest. Chapter 27. Grandfather falls and cracks his pelvis. Harry Key, Thaw, escapes from prison and is recaptured after he creates a scene on a train near Buffalo. 9. Houdini continues to grieve his dead mother, who took ill and died while he was touring Europe. She called out his name immediately before she died, and Houdini is plagued by the fear she wished to tell him something. He becomes interested in debunking methods used to speak with the dead and educates himself on the tricks of the trade. He incorporates these tricks into his magic show. He nearly reveals the secrets to his new tricks while performing in New Rochelle, but an explosion and the ensuing chaos prevents him from doing so. Chapters 28-30. Chapter 28. The explosion during Houdini's show is revealed as coming from the Emerald Isle firehouse. 2 volunteers are hospitalized and 4 others die. Some of the firemen appear to have died. Some of the firemen appear to have died from buckshot rather than fire or the explosion. When the New York City Police Department reconstructs the events, they discover 6 firemen had been playing poker when the alarm rang. They reacted quickly, as they are trained to do, setting off into the road where they were met by shotgun fire. 3 died immediately. The 4th died when the engine fell on him. Father hears the explosion and initially assumes his fireworks plant is the cause. The newspapers identify the bomber as a black man demanding to know the location of Willie Conklin. Father blames the mother for bringing Coalhouse Walker into their lives. Mother's younger brother reminds Father Coalhouse is the one who has been wrong. Coalhouse sends letters to the newspapers claiming involvement in the bombing attack and informing them he will continue to bomb firehouses until his demands are met and his car restored to its original condition. Chapter 29. The reader learns of Father's upbringing. The only child of a wealthy family, his mother dies when he is a teenager and his father squanders the family fortune on failed speculations. He dies, leaving Father nearly penniless. Father attends good schools and uses what little inheritance he has to invest in and eventually purchase a fireworks business. Father starts to lose his physical attraction to Mother. Mother has channeled her grief over Sarah's death into care for Sarah's son. Responding to Coalhouse's letters in the newspapers, pairs of policemen stand guard outside every firehouse. One day, several black men appear outside a firehouse, kill a policeman, and throw several bombs disguised as packages through the windows. They give the remaining policemen a letter to give the newspapers. Frightened, the town tightens security, and people shut themselves into their homes. Learning of the family's involvement with Sarah and Coalhouse, the press sets up camp outside the house in New Rochelle. Tension grows between father and mother. Father invites the little boy to a baseball game. Chapters 31-33. Chapter 31. Father's Day at the ballpark leaves him feeling rejuvenated. Father and mother discuss and make plans to leave New Rochelle for Atlantic City for a while, in order to escape the constant scrutiny of the press and their neighbors. The tension in town grows, and residents of African American neighborhoods experience harassment. The press photographs and publishes the extent of damage done to Coalhouse's car, much to the embarrassment of authorities. Citizens express a growing desire for Willie Conklin to leave New Rochelle, interpreting these desires as support for a Negro rather than one of their own. Conklin begins to drink excessively. He eventually realizes the upper-class citizens view him as lower class and thus of near equal social status to African Americans. The family successfully slips from the house and travels to Atlantic City. Chapter 32. Mother's younger brother, missing since his altercation with father, locates Coalhouse. Coalhouse questions mother's younger brother and, despite having an eloquent, idealized speech prepared, he simply tells Coalhouse he can make bombs. He is accepted into the gang. Mother's younger brother paints his face black and dresses like the other followers. Coalhouse's followers live communally and simply. They follow Coalhouse's directions with military efficiency. Collectively, they call themselves Coalhouse. Chapter 33. The family leads a leisurely life in Atlantic City. Mother's continuing sexual awareness manifests in decreased modesty while waiting. She questions her feelings for father. She loves him, but feels unsatisfied with and by him. She experiences guilt over her neglect of brother. Other men express interest in mother, but she ignores them. The family meets Baron Ashkenazi, a purported filmmaker, and his beautiful daughter. Chapters 34-36. Chapter 34. The two families develop a close friendship. The little girl and the little boy play together on the beach daily. The narrator reveals Baron Ashkenazi is really Tateh, who created a fake title of nobility for himself in order to assimilate into mainstream society. One day, the children are caught in a sudden storm. Mother and Tateh search frantically for their children and experience a giddy elation when reunited. Restless, bored, and concerned about his business father yearns to leave Atlantic City. He reads that Coalhouse and his followers have broken into J.P. Morgan's library. When a district attorney contacts him in the hopes father could help alleviate the situation, father decides to return to New York City. Chapter 35. Originally, Coalhouse's gang planned to take J.P. Morgan hostage in his home. However, a mix-up in details and locations lead them to attack the library rather than his residence. J.P. Morgan is, in fact, aboard a ship en route to Rome and eventually Egypt. The police take immediate action and block off the block and establish constant surveillance. When other city authorities decline to take control of the situation, the duty falls to District Attorney Charles S. Whitman. Whitman sends a patrolman to investigate. Thinking the roof offers a stealthy vantage point, the patrolman attempts to enter the library via a skylight. However, one of Coalhouse's followers quickly dispatches the policeman with a gunshot. Chapter 36. Whitman attempts to talk to Coalhouse from outside the building. Coalhouse throws a collectible tankard with a phone number inside out the window. Whitman calls Coalhouse, who once again reiterates his demands, including requesting that Conklin die in retribution for Sarah's death. Emma Goldman is arrested on false charges she is involved with Coalhouse. Whitman contacts African-American academic booker T. Washington for help. Washington, believing he can persuade Coalhouse to surrender, agrees. Chapters 37-40. Chapter 37. The narrator describes the great African-American academic booker T. Washington's beliefs regarding the advancement of the Negro people. Washington believes advancement will be achieved through friendship with white people. A great orator with an impressive education, Washington is used to people heeding his advice and is surprised when Coalhouse does not. Coalhouse steadfastly believes he must not sacrifice his self, respect, and bow to the white man's will. Coalhouse, however, for the first time decides he will leave JP. Morgan's library if, in an act of good faith, Willie Conklin is forced to rebuild his car, returning it to its original condition. Washington fails to see this as a modification of Coalhouse's original demands and leaves angry and disappointed. Chapter 38. Post. Meeting. Washington makes a public statement declaring Coalhouse a brain-sick man and encourages his friends and colleagues to come to Harlem to demonstrate their, and subsequently all African Americans, opposition to such a man. Father arrives and notices a 2-block radius has been cleared. Father overhears a conversation of Coalhouse's new demands and notes no one seems to have noticed the demands have changed. When he runs into the district attorney, he informs him of such. Morgan sends a message from abroad indicating Coalhouse's demands should be honored, and then Coalhouse should be dealt with accordingly. Father asks for the opportunity to negotiate further. When he is ushered into the library, he is shocked to find Mother's younger brother. Whitman complies and delivers the model, Tant and Willie Conklin. Coleman assures Father that if his new wishes are fully met, he will turn himself over to the police with one stipulation: his followers go free. Whitman agrees to Coalhouse's condition. Chapter 39. Conklin, forced to repair Coalhouse's model, T in the street, is completely humiliated. Coalhouse holds Father hostage in the library. Father takes the opportunity to seek out and confront Mother's younger brother. Mother's younger brother responds with criticism of Father's treatment of his factory workers. Conklin completes reconstruction on the car, and Coalhouse's followers exit the library and drive away in the model. Left behind, Coalhouse asks Father to tell him about his son